Hi everyone, Rich Crescenti here with another in our series of videos, Making Music with Melodyne, and today is part 2 of our series covering the macro controls. Now in video 1, we covered the pitch correction macro. Today we're going to be talking about the timing correction macro. And your macro controls are right here. This middle one is the timing correction macro. Now as a reminder, macro means large, or on a larger scale. So what this gives us the ability to do is apply some basic parameters to a group of notes or all the notes in the whole song. And what I'm going to do today is use Melodyne to tighten up some of these performances a little bit using the timing macro. All right, so let's dive in and take a look. This is the song Jet Lag by Colatura out of Brooklyn. Love this band. Here it is. Great. I love this. It's a really fun song, but like I said, I just want to tighten up some of these performances a little bit. So let's just start with our bass. I'm going to solo the bass right here and let's give this a listen. Very simple eighth note pattern that really drives very nicely. And I can use the timing macro to tighten up that timing a little bit. But we've got an issue right here. The way that the timing macro works is based off of these note separations, the front of the note. So in this particular case, the timing macro would move the front of this note to our reference point that we want, but all of these other notes in between that are not clearly defined, we wouldn't get the response that we want. So what we need to do is go in and tell Melodyne where we want those separations to be. We need to define those separations for Melodyne. And there are a couple of ways to do this. One, you can always right-click on your context menu, choose the note separation tool, and just come in and double-click wherever you think a separation should be. Melodyne has also given us a quick key for this, which is S, and that just separates at the next point Melodyne thinks there might be a separation. So I can select this blob right here and hit S, and then arrow to the right and hit S, and arrow to the right and hit S, and so on and so on. And here's a perfect example, right? We see now, I don't want this separation in right there. That's one separation too many. So I want to merge these two notes back together. Melodyne lets you do this, but it does not define the quick key for it. You can define it yourself. Just go into Settings, choose Preferences, come over here to Shortcuts, and we'll scroll down to where it says Edit and look for separation. And here we see separate note is S. That's what we want. That's the standard that it comes with. And here's merge note, which has M. It does not have this to begin with. I chose the letter M. You can choose whatever letter that you'd like. So now I can come to the first blob of these two and then hit M, and it will merge that separation together. All right. Now there's an easier way to do this, which is to go into your note assignment mode. That's this wrench right here. And this wrench, remember, note assignment mode is where we tell Melodyne how to interpret the data. This is not where we do editing. This is where we adjust and look at how Melodyne sees the data to begin with. And in here, there is a threshold for these note separations. You can enter note assignment mode and go to your note separation tool, and you'll get these two sliders right here. This slider to the right is the potential separations. When I increase this, you'll see we get more of these gray triangles, places that Melodyne thinks there might be a separation. We can also move this slider right here, which is the actual separation. So we could increase the number of separations by bringing that up. Now you're not done. You still have to tell Melodyne to separate those again. So I hit Command A to select all the notes, and we can right click and choose Reseparate Notes at Starting Point Lines. And that will take a few seconds, but it will work for you. However, I'm going to make a different recommendation for you. This is bass, so this is melodic or monophonic, right? And the algorithm it chose is melodic. Bass, most of the time, is monophonic. And this is what we would normally use, the right algorithm. But for time stretching, if you're not doing pitch correction and you're only doing time stretching, this is an area where I would recommend using the universal algorithm. It sounds best for this and it works best for this. So we'll just come over here to our algorithm, choose universal, and it will say, do you want to do this? Do you want to redetect? We'll say yes. You'll lose all the work you've done, but that's okay for my example right here. We'll redetect. It'll take a second, but you'll see why. We'll get all of these separations exactly where we want. And now these notes are better defined for the kind of timing correction that we want. Okay, so I've got the bass soloed. Let's solo up the drums as well and work on this timing. Let's play here and I'll adjust it using the timing macro. Now, on this timing macro, because she's playing eighth notes, I'm going to pick eighth notes right here. Let's give this a listen. That's a little more consistent, a little more on the groove like I want that to be right there. So that's great. Next up is going to be our acoustic guitar, and let's take a look at this one right here. We can add this in. Now, the acoustic guitar is automatically polyphonic, and for any kind of timing recommendations, don't use polyphonic at all. I would recommend doing the exact same thing. Come over to your algorithm, choose universal, redetect it, and you'll see that it's automatically just better set up for adjusting the timing. However, this time, I'm going to adjust the timing a little differently. Take a look at this, right? Before the session started today, I loaded my mono overhead track into Melodyne, right? This is percussive, which is what we want for this right here. It's an overhead on drums. But I'm not going to edit any of my drums with this. I'm going to use this as a timing reference. So when we go back to my acoustic guitar, and I come over here to my macro, I'm not going to choose a grid timing reference. I'm going to choose a track and then come over here to mono overhead, and this will tighten this up to the drums. I don't care about the grid lines. I want this to be tight with the drummer and the groove they've set down. So let's give this a listen. I like that. I haven't gotten rid of all the human performance of it. I've just tightened it up a little bit. How far you want to push that or not is entirely up to you. Just a reminder, there's no wrong way to make music. Just enjoy it and see what you think sounds best. Okay, let's look at another track right here, which is our synth track. I'm going to bring this in and we're going to listen to this one, and you'll see that it's just whole notes. Okay, easy enough to use the timing macro to correct this, but here's a problem. Now we have too many separations, right? I don't want to adjust all of these in between. These aren't really notes. It's just whole notes. We already saw how to solve this. We go to our note assignment mode, choose the note separation tool, and this time I'm going to tell it to choose fewer notes. And now we see just whole note separations like we want. I'll select all. I'll right click and go to reseparate notes at starting point lines. And it'll take a second. It's thinking about it. It has to recalculate where all of those separations should be. But when it's done, we'll see separations on the whole note, just like it is right here. So now we can only move the notes that we want to. Okay, so let's come back over here and edit and tighten this up to the drums the same way. While we're in here, I'm going to tighten up the bass back to the drums again. Okay, great. I like the way all of this is going so far. Now there's another one I'm going to do right here, which is a percussion track. And I want to point this one out because this is percussion. The algorithm is percussive. This is an area where I wouldn't switch over to universal. I'm going to leave it as percussive because the onset of these notes is pretty sharp and this will work just fine for this. This is actually taken from a virtual instrument. These are shakers and tambourine from a VST, and it's already tight to the grid because it's a virtual instrument, but I don't want it tight to the grid. I want it tight with the drummer. So we're going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to bring this percussion in and let's tighten this up to the drums. I like that. I like everything that's happened right there so far. All right, so let's just see what we've done, right? I'm going to start out with Melodyne bypassed. If you remember now in Melodyne with ARA, you've got this compare button right here, which is a global bypass for Melodyne. So I'm going to start with Melodyne completely bypassed and then bring it in and out, and you can see if you agree with me that the timing is a little bit better now. Here we go, starting with it bypassed. You'll see it's bypassed. All these notes are grayed out right here. I like that. Again, I didn't remove all the human performance from it. I just tightened it up a little bit. Now, one last thing that I always do on here, and I do this a lot on bass, on guitars, on a lot of instruments, is once I've gotten the timing sort of tightened where I want it, now I'm going to take all the notes and nudge them slightly forward or back. There's a spot where I feel like you'll find the groove works better and you even get a little bit better separation from the notes right here. So I'm going to take this bass and move it back a couple of milliseconds. This is easy to do in Melodyne. You just want to select the notes that you want to move, and then it is Shift Command and the right or left arrow. So I'm going to move this back a few milliseconds and we'll see if it tightens up the timing overall and feels better. Here we go. That's 3 milliseconds that I nudged that there, and I think it just gives a little bit better movement with the kick and the bass, and I like that a lot. Okay, so let's take a look at some vocals, and I want to let you know that vocals are a little bit tougher for the timing macro, and that's because the timing macro works best with instruments that have a very clear onset of the note, and vocals do not always have that. As a matter of fact, a lot of times with vocals, the notes onset in a very, very different way. But we can still use the timing macro. You may just have to go in after and tweak it a little bit. Now here I'm not going to use universal because I do have to do some pitch correction on these vocals. I haven't done that yet here. I like to do timing first because I think you tend to do less pitch correction when the timing is already corrected. Okay, so let's give these two vocals a listen.
We used to fly around the world just for the thrill. Now we're inside and have jet lag standing still.
Okay, great. Now I'm going to tighten these up, and again, I don't care about the bar and beat line. I want to tighten up one to the other. So in this case, I'm going to use Jen as the reference, so I'll make her voice these gray blobs so they don't get moved with the timing. And I'm going to adjust the timing of Mir to match Jen right there. So let's select all of these, come over here to our macro. We'll choose track again and come down to Jen, and let's tighten it up a little bit.
We used to fly around the world just for the thrill. Now we're inside and have jet lag standing still.
Okay, great. I like that. That's good. That's a little bit tighter. But there's a few areas where it needs a little bit of help, and you can see why when we zoom in right here, right? When we look at this, you'll see that because this note onsets, it starts at such a soft volume and then ramps up, that Melodyne didn't adjust the timing of those to start at the exact same time. It moved the note separation, but where the pitch actually starts, which is really what I'm looking for right there, That's a little different. This is easily fixed in a couple of different ways. I'll show you the way that I like. I might come over to my note separation tool and just adjust this separation so that it starts right where the pitched point of the note starts right there. Now I can manually go in and adjust this timing so that these notes start at the exact same time. And now we get
We used to
a much more together onset of those notes right there. So now we've seen how we can adjust vocals, guitar, bass, percussion, all these instruments with the timing macro. Hope you've enjoyed this today. Thanks.